Real, true education, not fake news. Good morning. It's May Day, 1st of May, and this was the Baltana festival in ancient Ireland, in ancient Celtic folklore. Baltana is the Gaelic word for the month of May. And as you can see, I'm sitting in the midst of the shadow flicker, which is coming right in here where I've been making all these videos this morning. It used to be long ago that people would go out on a May morning and that rub their hand on the dew of the grass and wash their face with it. And it had a particular meaning. It was the beginning of summer. And we can see here that the entire landscape here, all around the whole farm, is invaded not only by what you see happening here, which is the flicker of the blades of the wind turbine number 3, which intercept the sun and cause the sun's rays to be interfered with in the way you see here. Of course, this was all spelled out during planning to Cavan County Council and to Bord Pleanála, and they promptly ignored it at all cost. It's 4F. Now, I've given this the 4 number because it's a legal matter in many ways. Now, not only this, but once you step outside the door here, and it's a very calm morning, it's cold, and there is a very slight breeze, but the noise is unbelievable. There's just a noise like a washing machine and a tumble dryer going together in company with this shadow flicker. So it's from the Rara Wind Farm, and they're looking for a customer, and the nearest thing is BlackRock. BlackRock is a big multinational investor and they want to go green. And if you have viewed the film by Michael Moore and Jeff Gibbs called The Planet of the Humans, you'll see BlackRock mentioned there. So these people are hoping to be rescued by BlackRock. Now, one of the things that's amazing is that the land on which this wind farm sits, there are 3 landowners involved. And the whole lot, if put together, would not exceed about any more than 140 acres, I would think. And it's mixed land, some of it good land, some of it not too good. It's upland kind of land with good lowland, some of it good enough for lowland land. It's mixed, about 50-50. But it's not really bad land either. But 30 million euros went into building this thing and putting up the turbines. And that begs the question, why didn't they buy the land? 140 acres around here, you'd easily buy it for 5,000 an acre. You'd buy it for much less than $1 million. So you can work it out yourself. 100 acres would be 500,000. 150 acres would be 750,000. So about 700,000. I suppose they'd want a bit more if they thought there was money there. But 800,000 would buy the whole lot, and yet they don't own the land. It's the original landowners own the land. And I believe the reason is quite simple, that whenever the tide turns, and it will turn, and these will be left lying there, remember it takes 92 years to repay the cost of this wind farm. And when that happens, they'll walk off and leave the whole mess to the local landowners. And the law is that any citizen, I mightn't be alive, but any citizen can go into court and force them to comply with the conditions. And there's nothing the council or anyone else can do. The judge has no option, only order them to do it. And then the taking down of these would cost more than 10 times the value of the farms, or even more. Not only that, the whole farms are destroyed by being dug up and ruined. Never go back to agricultural land under any circumstances. So that's the story. So one of the other things is on that is that to let you know about, and if I get cut off, the battery's a bit low here. The Court of Justice of the EU is constantly upgrading the environmental directives, the habitats, the pollution control and the environmental impact assessment directive, and they're constantly updating it for the local project. But meanwhile, they will not insist that the strategic environmental assessment directive is complied with. So you have big law going into the local project and the overarching project not assessed at all. and that conflicts with the Aarhus Convention, and the United Nations has censured Ireland several times on several complaints, one by Pat Swords, a friend of mine in my association, the European Platform Against Wind Farms, and he has taken several complaints and won in each case, and yet they will not do it. What they have to do in Ireland is to bring in a piece of legislation in the Planning Act to amend the Planning and Development Act so that the Strategic Environmental Assessment report, environmental report, must be available for a project which is covered by it, for an industry which is covered by it. And so the overarching plan and programme would have to be assessed, and therefore the usefulness of these things would have to be assessed. They failed to do that. So why is the EU being hypocritical? Why is it insisting on all these measures down low? Because it wants to look good. It wants, oh, we're green, oh, we're all for the environment, we're all for the habitats. And yet, at the same time, as we saw in the film Planet of the Humans, they're promoting these hell for leather. And people who have been in and spoken to them and who know them and who are involved with them realise at this stage it's nothing to do with logic, it's to do with a religious fervour for this. They have gone in so far they cannot accept that they got it wrong, that they were actually made fools of. I mean, the EU is promoting palm oil and other types of things, which is mowing down pristine rainforests, the home of the little orangutans you saw in the film. The most cruel thing you could possibly do. They're after bringing in, allowing South American beef come in to compete with Irish beef, and that's going to ruin the rainforest there as well. So it doesn't matter to the EU what the end result is, so long as they're seen to be doing this, and so long as their renewable energy programme is pushed ahead. And that includes the interconnector to France and all of that stuff, and all these interconnectors. It's a religion with them, it can't be stopped. But there's another reason why they don't want this either. And that is that while the EU is pumping in hundreds of trillions of euros into green energy, they're giving it through all these. That's why these are here. There's money going everywhere. Into anything like this, you get it thrown at you. And so, in many ways, the builders of this wind farm don't worry if it's never paid back. The landowners may be stuck with it, but they don't worry because they've already got enough out of it to do them. They've got their bit. Hopefully they can flog it on to BlackRock Investments and or some other idiot and get out. If they don't get out, they're caught a bit. They have to run it, and then they're in a bit of trouble. But while the EU is pumping in this money into renewables, they've neglected to upgrade their traditional fossil fuel generating plant. And at best, these windmills save about 4% of fossil fuel, if they save any. And I've explained that in the 17 series. But the thing about it is that while they have been neglecting to upgrade their ordinary generating plant, America has been doing exactly opposite. Now, there is a lot of renewables in America. There's a good lot, but nothing like the amount here. President Obama was hell-bent on, he said in his inaugural speech, I'll harness the wind, on all this stuff. But they've gone a bit wallop now. They're not doing well. It's not flavour of the month. President Trump himself has said he thinks they're a waste of time, bird chompers. He talks about the noise, and he talks about the issue we see here with the shadow flicker. Now, you'll see now it's fading away as the sun rises in the sky. So it's about 7:40 in the morning here at the minute, 7:40 a.m. So while America is upgrading its gas plant and efficient plant and turning to gas and turning to more efficient, less emitting, CO2 emitting plant, it's succeeding in cutting its CO2 emissions, whereas the EU is not succeeding. It's failing because this doesn't work. And next thing down the road, and I presume Mr. Trump will be elected for another 4 years, is that the industry that derives from cheap electricity, such as paints, chemicals, plastics, and all of the other things that is now being geared up in the United States. And this is particularly so after the COVID-19, because they're realising of the dangers of relying on China for their raw materials and for their manufactured goods. So what happens when America becomes super efficient and Europe is still in the doldrums trying to make their products with these things? with windmills and solar panels, and electricity for me is 26 cent a kilowatt hour, and in America it's only 12. So that's for a domestic customer. So what's going to happen is they're going to flood the markets with their goods, their good quality American made goods. Right? That's what's going to happen. You're going to see paint, chemicals, plastics, all of those things manufactured in America and brought in here. After all, if we can bring in enough wood chippings from America to fire a gas plant in a Drax plant in England, where there's a train every 10 minutes, we surely can bring in things like glass, like perspex, things that are very dear. A sheet of perspex that you see in the shops now to protect you from coronavirus is about 75 for an 8x4 sheet, €75 for an 8 foot by 4 foot sheet. It's very, very expensive. So those things will be imported from America. And the first thing the European Union is going to have to do is to put in a tariff, the same as Trump put a tariff. But the European Union and America are in the World Trade Organization, and a condition of tariffs is that if you put in tariffs, you have to show that you complied with your local and international laws in the manufacture of your product. So you cannot produce a product, let's say, which is pollutes and breaks your local law on pollution, or on habitat, or on environmental assessment, or maybe it's danger, maybe health and safety regulations are not kept in its manufacture. If the local law says those laws have to be complied with, and you don't comply with them, then when they put in the tariffs to block American goods, America can challenge the EU because they're not complying with the law. And they're not complying with the Aarhus Convention, which is an internationally legally binding convention. They're not complying with the SEA directive, their own directive on strategic environmental assessment, for a start, in the production of their goods. So they'll claim that they used windmills to make this product, which is twice the price of the American one, and they'll say they use solar panels. But they can't show that they've assessed any of this under the Aarhus Convention and international law. And they're hoping that that will not be copped by the Americans. That's why they're resisting. In my case, I took to the High Court on the North-South Interconnector, on the SEA Directive and the Aarhus Convention. The judge ruled that Burplanora had no substantive decision to make. In other words, it couldn't refuse. That's not the law. That is not the international and national law. Burplanora have to be independent. We have a judge who ruled that, Judge Max Barrett. And so when they try to slap their 25 or 30% tariffs on American goods, they're hoping America won't realise this breach. And if myself or Mr. Swords or any of the other people, and there's a good few trying this, were allowed have their case heard, you're not allowed into the European Court. The European Platform Against Wind Farms tried to bring it into the European Court of Justice, and we were blocked. You can't challenge the EU state. They don't have Magna Carta like in Britain. You can't challenge the EU state. You can't get in. You cannot challenge it. The Irish government refuses to bring in a section of the Planning and Development Act, the same as it did for the EIA directive, the Local Environmental Assessment Directive. They will not do it. So therefore, all of this is progressing without any assessment by engineers or any experts whatsoever. And this is why they're paranoid. Their religion is we have to push on with these renewables to the end of time till there's not a halfpenny or a cent left in the coffers. On the other hand, they're going to be facing massive competition. They're already high unemployment. When America gets going again after coronavirus and with all this clean fossil fuel energy, mostly from natural gas, and a lot of it fracked, it has to be said, whether you like that or not, and they're going to flood the European market with these goods. Europe's going to kick with tariffs, and Europe is hoping that there'll be no rulings in place on the failure to comply with the conventions and with the law. And that's why they're resisting us to such a degree to try and force their green religion through. So that's it, folks. Thank you very much. I'll let you go. My battery stuck it. I think I've explained that, and it's early in the morning, so we'll see. I hope that came out all right. Thank you very much.